Can't really hear you. Oh yeah, much better. Innovators, today we are working on a really cool project using just some regular cardboard. We are going to use cardboard to create a speaker or an amplifier for your mobile device or your cell phone. You can even make a larger one for your iPad or tablet. So, using simple materials, we are going to amplify sound. So, let's grab the materials that we need and let's get to work. Innovators, we've gathered all the materials that we need to start constructing our amplifier or speaker, but I just wanted to talk about a few of the things that we're going to need. Now, in order to cut your cardboard, you could use a good pair of scissors. You could also use an X-Acto knife or a box cutter, but if you do, please have the supervision of an adult. We want to make sure that you're doing everything very safely. So, make sure that you ask an adult for help or that they're supervising you when you're using an X-Acto knife or a box cutter. Now, when you're constructing your actual and assembling your speaker, you're going to use some glue. Now, if you have access to a hot glue gun, you could use this. The advantage to a glue gun is that it dries a lot faster. If you're just going to use some regular school glue, you'll have to make sure that you give it enough time to dry. Now, the last thing that we're going to use, and I use plenty of it, is some tape. You can use Scotch tape. Packaging tape works really, really well. And the reason we're going to use the tape is because it's going to help hold our speaker together. That's what we're going to use to assemble our speaker. It's also really useful if you're going to let your glue dry. The tape allows the box to stay together while that glue dries. So you'll notice that when I'm building mine, I'm actually going to use glue and tape. So we have everything that we need. Now let's start building. All right, innovators, to get started, we're going to need to cut out 4 rectangles. My rectangle measures about 3 inches by 6 inches. So we're going to use this piece of cardboard and we're going to measure everything out. So now, innovators, keep in mind, depending on the size of your speaker, you may want to make your rectangles much bigger. I've measured them out, so this is about the size of my cell phone, so that's why I'm cutting them to this size. But again, if you're making a speaker for an iPad, or if your phone's slightly smaller or larger, then that'll really determine the size of your squares. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you cut out a square that is going to be able to fit the width of your phone. So keep that in mind. Now let's go ahead and continue cutting. I'm going to use a box cutter to cut. Make sure that you have the supervision of an adult if you are using a box cutter or an X-Acto knife. Great, I got my 4 pieces of cardboard. Now, I'm going to set 2 aside. And I'm going to take one of them. And I'm going to measure a few inches. I want to make about a mark about halfway. And I'll do the same thing on the other side, about right in the middle. Okay, and using my X-Acto knife, I am going to make a line from one corner to that center mark. And these are going to be the sides of my speaker, the side walls of my cardboard amplifier. these are now going to be the sides of my speaker. This will be the bottom. And now let's take this piece here. Now we're going to have to make an opening. We'll use this piece. We'll need to make an opening for our cell phone. So you're going to take your mobile device and you're going to measure out its width. Now again, this is going to change. This little slit you're making really will depend on the size of your the device that you're going to put in there. Okay. And once you've done that, go ahead and cut that out. Now remember, if you are using a box cutter or X-Acto knives, you always want to cut away from your fingers. Practice safety. And again, do this with the help or supervision of an adult. Okay. Great. Now, the last thing that we need to do is that we need to create a back for our speaker. So, in order to do that, we're going to cut out another piece of cardboard. Okay. We want it to be the same width as the centerpiece, and we want it to be as tall as one of the small, the narrow side of the sidewall. So again, you want it to be the width of one of your centerpieces, and you want it to be as tall as one of the narrow sides of your speaker. Okay. Excellent. We now have all of the pieces to start building our speaker. So let's move on to the next building step. All right, innovators, we've cut out our pieces of cardboard to construct our speaker, and I'm gonna lay down the bottom portion of my speaker. Now these three pieces I'm gonna glue and tape together, and they're going to come up to form the base of my speaker. Then we'll put our top and our back. So cut out this small piece too. This will go back here, like that. All right. Now, there's a few ways that you can do this. You can use tape, and if you're going to use tape, I would suggest that we start off by laying those pieces out. Now, if you're going to use tape, these are going to be the outside walls of your speaker. So, I'm going to start off with a little bit of tape, joining these two back pieces like so. Okay. And I'm going to use another piece of tape here. Now, it's okay if the tape overlaps because you'll be cutting that off. And the reason I'm doing this is this is going to hold it together while I glue those pieces together. So now I should be able to flip it over, and I'll be able to pull up the walls of my speaker. Go ahead and tape that. Now you might want to leave a little bit of space in between your pieces of cardboard. That way you have enough flexibility to fold these up. Okay, great. So now you have this. And I'm going to use a little bit of hot glue to bring them all together. Now, if you don't have hot glue, you can just use some Elmer's glue, but you'll just have to make sure to let that dry. So I'll lift my first piece up. And since I'm using hot glue, I'm going to give it a second to dry. Okay. It's looking pretty good. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'll bring that up. And I'm also going to apply a little bit of glue along this edge so that it connects there. Now, one technique that you can use if you don't want to hold this in place is, remember, you have tape. So go ahead and take a small piece of tape. I'm going to connect this corner like so. Not only is it holding my speaker in place, but it's allowing that glue to dry. So I'll do the same thing on the other side. This is coming along very nicely. Apply some glue here. Apply some glue along this edge. And we will go ahead and then bring that together. And we'll use our piece of tape to secure it in place. Excellent. Now that's coming along really nicely. Now I do have some excess tape here that I'm going to go ahead and cut off in just a bit. But before we do that, it's looking nice. We're going to apply the top of our speaker. Now, as you remember, I cut the top off and I made this small incision here. That is going to be where our cell device fits. So you want to make sure that you measure it out to your cell phone or to your, if you're making a larger one, to your tablet. And this is going to rest on top like this. Great. So I'm going to go ahead and prepare a few pieces of tape that are going to help me hold it together. And I'll start applying my glue. And again, if you're using Elmer's glue, you can use that. Okay. Go ahead and apply our hot glue here. Okay, and we'll place our speaker top along the top edge. Make sure that you align it the way that you'd like. And remember, we cut these little pieces of tape that you can use to help secure. And again, that'll help the glue dry in place. It'll also give your speaker a little bit more support. Okay. Well, that came along nicely. You have this cavernous space that's going to allow the sound to echo out. You have a slot to insert your cell phone. Now let's take a look at it from a few different angles and let's test it out. Let's take a look at our speaker from another angle. It came out very nice. I have nice edges. If it sits nice and flat on any surface. Right, and it has a nice space in the middle that's going to amplify the sound of our speaker. We also cut out a slot to put our phones in. Now, our next step is to kind of clean it up. I'm going to take a pair of scissors, and I'm just going to cut off this extra tape. There we go. If you're using a hot glue gun, you might get little strands of hot glue that you can cut off. This is also a very good opportunity to go around and feel your speaker. Does it feel secure? Does it need any more tape? Maybe a little more glue? to make it feel more sturdy, but this is looking very nicely. Now, the last thing I'm going to do is I want my phone to rest on something. So I'm going to go ahead and put another piece of cardboard back here to help support my phone. And I'm going to do that using a little bit of tape and some glue. So the first thing that I'll do is I'm just going to apply a piece of tape here to a small piece of cardboard that's about the size of my speaker. And I'm going to put the tape inside of the slot and wrap it around. So I'll put my hand inside. So now there's a piece of tape that's helping hold it there in place. And I'm going to use this piece here, a small piece of cardboard that I cut out, in order to help support that piece. And then I'm going to strengthen the whole thing with a little bit of glue. So go ahead and place this here. Now remember, if you're using white glue, you just want to let things dry. Give it some time. One of the benefits of the hot glue gun is that it dries fairly quickly, but again, if you don't have access to one, Elmer's glue will work just fine. You just got to give it a little bit of time to dry. So again, all I did was place this small piece of cardboard here. I glued it here at the bottom. It's nice and secure, and I glued it along the top of the larger piece of cardboard. Now, I'm going to go ahead and put just a little bit of glue back here in each corner just to secure that piece. And remember, we already used a piece of tape to do that as well. So this is just to give it a little extra support. Go ahead and cut off those little strands of hot glue, and great, this is feeling pretty secure. So now when I rest my phone on my speaker, it'll have a nice little sled to rest on. Excellent. Now, the last thing that you might have to do, and this depends on your cell phone, is as you put it inside, you might notice that it'll slip in, right? You maybe don't want it to go all the way in. So you could put a little piece of cardboard inside of your box to hold your phone, or if you're comfortable with it, just kind of going halfway through, you can. So this looks good to me, and now we're ready to test it out. Innovators, now that we've created our speaker, let's go ahead and test it out. So I have some music playing here on my phone. It sounds kind of loud. I've turned it all the way up. Let's see what happens when I put it inside of my speaker. Nice. You can actually hear it louder. Now, innovators, what's happening here? Well, my cell phone has speakers on the bottom of it. So when that sound comes through our little cardboard amplifier, what it's doing is it's directing the sound. Those sound waves are bouncing off of the cardboard, and they're being directed in a certain direction towards our listener. You may also wonder why we're using this specific shape. Well, as the sound projects out, we want to make sure that those sound waves are amplified and have space to move out. So our small cardboard speaker can produce some pretty loud sound. Very cool. Innovators, thanks for trying today's project out. We're able to use cardboard in order to really experiment with sound waves and amplify the sound that comes out of our devices. So remember, innovators, to always think critically and to think creatively. Until next time, see you later!